Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris here, and I'm bringing you my review of Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. I shouldn't say it 3 times because we all know what happens if that occurs, but this is one of those long-awaited legacy sequels that I really never thought would come to fruition. The first movie, I don't know that I would say it's a classic, but it sort of verges on classic status, and it's not a perfect film at all, but I've always loved it. I've loved how just sort of random, off-the-wall, hilarious, sort of macabre the whole thing was. So going into this one, knowing that Tim Burton was involved, Michael Keaton's back, Catherine O'Hara, a lot of the components that made the original movie what it is are coming back. I had high hopes, but I think a lot of times these long-awaited sequels don't always pan out to what you want them to be. So I will say up front that this is not as good as the original movie. It's just not. I don't think it has the comedic punch that the original movie did, just sort of in the timeliness of that late 80s era. And even that original movie, there were some kind of undertones there about consumerism, I think, and some juxtapositional types of things that Burton did really well, where you've got sort of that macabre, as I referenced earlier, humor, sort of butting up against sort of that weird late 80s kind of, I don't know if the word would be new age, but sort of the vibe that was created by Delia as a character in her art, and sort of that time period, right? So the question was, could Tim Burton, and everybody involved recapture that same essence? Or should they even try to do that, right? Should they try to do that or do something entirely new? What they've opted for here is something that does, in a lot of ways, rebottle the essence of the first movie, but it's an entirely new story in a lot of ways. I mean, of course, it is a direct sequel to the events of the original film. I'm not going to get into spoiler territory here. I will say that early on, it's kind of exposition heavy. So like the first 20 minutes or so is taking a little while. I wouldn't say it's plotting necessarily, Plodding, not plotting. But it does take a little while to get going. But once it kind of kicks into gear, what you get is really sort of an avalanche of practical effects. And I loved that aspect of the movie. I love that there's not really an over-reliance on CGI. It's there in a couple of sequences, but it's actually pretty rare. It's got the same look and feel and really kind of the same world building that we see in the original movie. And for that, I absolutely adore this. I love that component of it. Michael Keaton is great, again, as Beetlejuice. I don't know that he necessarily has the same comedic energy that was there in the first movie exactly, but he gets really close to that. But in the end, he really just jumps back into that character relatively flawlessly. And it's interesting the role that the character of Beetlejuice plays in the larger story here. So the story basically, just quickly, is about the passing of Lydia's father, played by Jeffrey Jones in the original movie, obviously not in this movie, and dealing with that tragedy. And Lydia has a daughter named Astrid, who is very skeptical of everything that Lydia does. She works as sort of a supernatural TV host, sort of one of those ghost hunter types of things, sort of using her ability that we know about from the first movie to help people deal with their hauntings and situations like that. But she doesn't buy into that. Lydia's daughter doesn't buy into that. But some events occur after her grandfather's passing, Astrid's grandfather's passing. They bring her back to her hometown, Winter River, and there's sort of a story, kind of a subplot, but actually a major part of the main plot. I know that's a little bit roundabout and kind of vague what I'm saying here. I don't want to spoil anything. This sort of works its way into this. And that component of the film, I think, is one of the best pieces of it. It's a surprisingly good kind of horror story in that sense. And I think in a lot of ways, this actually has a slightly more developed plot in the original movie. But again, it doesn't have that same kind of lightning in a bottle feel consistently in the way that that movie did. But again, the practical effects are amazing. Everyone is just having a lot of fun making this movie and being a part of this and returning to this world. And I did love the additional lore, as I kind of referenced earlier, that is brought out here. We learn a little bit more about the afterlife and sort of its bureaucratic nature and some of the things that go on there. And you learn a little bit more about Beetlejuice. Not to get too spoilery here, but we get something that I always thought would be really cool to have in a Beetlejuice sequel, and it's a little bit of a backstory for him. And I'm not going to talk about that. But you kind of see where he came from and how, in some ways, he got to be what he is. And so that's really cool. So now, when you take a step back and look at Beetlejuice as a movie, what it seems like occurred in a lot of it was, as they wrote the movie and made the movie, there were so many great ideas, so many macabre ideas that were woven into it that it's almost like sort of a sensory overload. I would say the majority of it works. Sometimes it doesn't work, but there's no denying that it's a fun experience overall. I don't know if it would be wise to revisit the world of Beetlejuice for a third film. I do think that the way they sort of unspool the story here, there is certainly room for that. And I would be totally on board with it because Tim Burton clearly really poured a lot of love and effort into this long awaited sequel. So, in that regard, I would be there for it. I just think it's sort of like playing with fire when you keep going back to the well with these types of things. Like, they've done a good job of making this a good follow up to the original. And you've got two really good movies to sort of go back to here. And so it's like, why mess with a good thing? Just kind of leave it as is. So, yes, I really enjoyed this. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but I did like it a lot. And I had a really good time with it. Oh, also, I had to pay the $35 at my local Regal to get the Beetlejuice tombstone prop because it lights up. It looks great in the movie room. I think my wife gave me a little bit of side eye when I came home with this. Like, really? You know, you had to pick up that thing, but I couldn't help it. So in the end, yes, I will absolutely revisit this movie. As soon as it comes out on 4K Blu-ray, I'm going to pick it up and watch it again just because I love the characters. I love the world. I love the way this thing plays out. I love the frequent hilarity of it, and it's just great to have something like this. And I will say, too, it's a good kind of Halloween season movie. It really captures sort of the vibe of the time period that we're kind of inching into here, you know, hopefully soon getting deeper into September and then October. So I really enjoyed it. I think Burton and Company approach this and revive the franchise in a wise way in not just retreading familiar ground and trying to do something different. And I like the direction they took here, even if it doesn't always work. So anyway, if you've seen Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, let me know what you think in the comments down below. And as always, thanks so much for watching.